The illusion of knowing. Why we all secretly believe we're smarter than we are. Look around you, or better yet, look inside. Have you ever scrolled through social media, read a comment, or listened to someone speak, and felt that surge of incredulity? That internal scream of, how can they possibly believe something so wrong? So obviously, glaringly, fundamentally mistaken. And as that thought bubbles up, a quieter, more insidious voice often follows. Thank goodness I'm not like that. Thank goodness I see clearly. We all do it. It's a human default. We perceive ourselves as rational, well-informed, and generally more competent than the average person. But here's the unsettling truth, the one that whispers in the quiet hours. What if we are the ones who are profoundly mistaken? What if our very certainty is a symptom of a deeper blindness? It's an uncomfortable thought, isn't it? Because if you're honest, truly honest with yourself, you've probably had moments of sudden, embarrassing clarity. Moments where you realized you were confidently wrong about something you were absolutely convinced of. Maybe it was a simple fact, a complex historical event, or even just navigating a new piece of technology. The feeling of that certainty crumbling, that sudden flush of heat in your cheeks, is a universal human experience. This isn't about intelligence. It's about a deeply ingrained psychological phenomenon, an insidious trap that ensnares brilliant minds and average Joes alike. It's the reason why some of the most foolish people confidently stride into positions of power, why baffling ideas gain traction, and why genuine expertise is often dismissed. And understanding it, truly understanding it, might just be one of the most vital acts of self-awareness you can undertake. Let's dive into what's become a cornerstone of modern psychological insight, the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's not just a catchy phrase, it's a profound observation on the nature of human competence and self-perception. In 1999, psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger published a paper that stemmed from a curious case. A man named MacArthur Wheeler robbed two banks with lemon juice on his face, believing it would make him invisible to security cameras. He genuinely thought he was being ingenious, yet his plan was absurdly flawed. What Dunning and Kruger found after numerous studies was startlingly consistent. People who are least competent at a task tend to overestimate their competence the most. Conversely, highly competent people often underestimate their abilities, sometimes significantly. Think of it like this. If you're terrible at playing the guitar, you probably don't even know enough about music theory or technique to understand how bad you are. You might strum a few chords, think it sounds okay, and genuinely believe you're quite good. But a master guitarist, someone who understands the infinite nuances of scales, rhythm, and emotional expression, is acutely aware of how much more there is to learn, how many imperfections exist in their own playing. They possess the very knowledge required to accurately assess their own skill, and also to recognize the vastness of what they don't know. This is the cruel irony of the Dunning-Kruger effect. The very lack of skill that makes you incompetent also prevents you from realizing your incompetence. It's a double burden. You're not just bad at something, you're also bad at knowing you're bad at it. And this isn't about arrogance, it's about a cognitive blind spot. The internal struggle, the fear, is that this applies to us, to you right now watching this. But the Dunning-Kruger effect isn't just a quirky psychological phenomenon. It has profound implications for society, for leadership, and for our personal lives. It helps explain why social media is a hotbed of confident yet misinformed opinions. It sheds light on why some political leaders can confidently push flawed policies. And it explains why, despite overwhelming evidence, some individuals cling to demonstrably false beliefs. This is where the insights of philosophers like Nietzsche become chillingly relevant. Nietzsche, in his radical critique of modern society, often spoke of the herd mentality and the dangers of conformity. He foresaw a world where people would increasingly embrace comforting illusions over harsh truths. For Nietzsche, genuine knowledge was hard-won, often uncomfortable, and demanded a kind of intellectual courage. But the herd, he argued, preferred simplicity, certainty, and the warm embrace of shared delusion. He didn't explicitly name the Dunning-Kruger effect, but he grasped its essence, the human tendency to prioritize ease and comfort over the arduous pursuit of truth. Why do dumb ideas go viral, as some of those viral titles suggest? Because they often offer simplistic answers to complex problems. They validate existing biases, and they require no intellectual heavy lifting. They cater to that unconscious desire to feel smart without actually being smart. A shortcut to certainty without the messy process of genuine inquiry.
Consider also Plato's ancient warning about the tyranny of the ignorant. In his allegory of the cave, Plato described prisoners who had lived their entire lives seeing only shadows on a wall, believing them to be reality. When one prisoner escapes and sees the true world outside, they return to share the truth, only to be ridiculed and even threatened by those who prefer the familiar shadows. Plato feared democracy could descend into a state where people, content with their shadows, would elect leaders who promised more shadows, leaders who flattered their ignorance rather than challenging it with uncomfortable truths. He worried about a society where the pursuit of pleasure and fleeting opinion superseded the pursuit of wisdom and justice. This isn't just a historical anecdote. It's a living, breathing blueprint for how easy it is for an entire society to fall prey to the collective Dunning-Kruger effect, where widespread incompetence is not just tolerated, but celebrated. Now, let's bring in Machiavelli, the ultimate realist of power. Machiavelli wasn't concerned with why people were foolish, but how that foolishness could be exploited. He knew that for a ruler, appearing strong, decisive, and knowledgeable was often more important than actually being strong, decisive, or knowledgeable. The Dunning-Kruger effect plays directly into this. A leader suffering from it might genuinely believe they are a genius, projecting an unwavering confidence that others mistake for competence. Machiavelli understood that people are often easily swayed by appearances, by charisma, and by those who speak with unshakable conviction, even if that conviction is built on sand. He would argue that the most foolish people end up in power not always through malicious intent, but often because their sheer audacity and inability to recognize their own limitations makes them appear fearless and capable. Qualities often desired by a public yearning for strong leadership, especially in uncertain times. This is the uncomfortable truth. We, the public, are often complicit in elevating the Dunning-Kruger prone. We mistake confidence for competence, bombast for brilliance, and certainty for truth. So if we are all susceptible to this illusion of knowing, and if it impacts our individual lives, our leadership, and the very fabric of society, what can we do? This isn't about blaming others for their ignorance. It's about acknowledging a fundamental human vulnerability that affects us all. The first step, and perhaps the most painful, is radical self-honesty. This is where the spirit of Bonhoeffer comes in, albeit from a different angle. Bonhoeffer's observation on the dangers of stupidity, as distinct from mere ignorance, highlights its moral dimension. He saw that an unwillingness to engage with truth, a a stubborn refusal to learn, and a comfortable retreat into prejudice were hallmarks of this dangerous stupidity. For us, this means actively seeking out disconfirming evidence, embracing discomfort, and becoming lifelong learners. It means having the courage to admit, I don't know, or even more painfully, I was wrong. This is profoundly difficult because our brains are wired for consistency and confirmation. We naturally seek out information that validates what we already believe and avoid what challenges it. This is called confirmation bias, and it's the Dunning-Kruger effect's best friend. It creates an echo chamber within our own minds, making it nearly impossible to detect our own blind spots. To escape this trap, we must actively cultivate what has been called intellectual humility. It's the antithesis of the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's the recognition that our knowledge is always incomplete, that our perspectives are limited, and that true wisdom lies in the constant pursuit of understanding, not in the illusion of already possessing it. It means being open to changing our minds, to listening deeply to opposing viewpoints, and to acknowledging the vast ocean of what we don't know. It means challenging ourselves to embrace the discomfort of not knowing, to resist the urge for instant certainty. It means adopting a growth mindset, where mistakes are seen not as failures, but as invaluable opportunities for learning and growth. And here's the unexpected, deeply human truth. The wisest among us are often the ones who are most acutely aware of their own ignorance. Socrates famously said that the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. He wasn't being falsely modest. He genuinely understood the infinite complexity of existence and the limitations of human understanding. The more you learn, the more you realize how much more there is to learn. This is why highly competent individuals often rate themselves lower, because they possess the very knowledge that reveals the vast landscape of what remains unknown. So the next time you find yourself utterly convinced of something, especially something that seems universally obvious to you, pause, take a deep breath, ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? Seek out dissenting opinions, not to argue with them, but to genuinely understand them. Question your own assumptions. Embrace the uncomfortable feeling of doubt, for it is often the first step towards genuine insight. Because the real danger isn't that some people are stupid. The real danger is that we all, at times, fall victim to the illusion of knowing, confidently navigating a world with partial maps and flawed compasses, unaware of the vast uncharted territories that lie beyond our immediate perception. The path out of this illusion isn't easy, but it's profoundly rewarding. It leads to intellectual freedom, genuine understanding, and a deeper, more compassionate engagement with the world. It means shedding the comfortable cloak of certainty for the exhilarating yet sometimes terrifying journey of perpetual learning. So, are you truly smart, or do you just think you are? The answer lies not in what you know, but in how willing you are to admit what you don't. And that, perhaps, is the truest measure of wisdom.